Hello everybody, my name is Happy and I'd like to welcome you all to my history reaction channel. Today is Friday, so we're going to be continuing with our series on Napoleon. Last week we finished up with Oversimplified, which we've been doing on Saturday, so we're going to start doing Napoleon on Saturdays as well, so that we can move a little faster on the Napoleonic Wars and get all the way through it. So with that said and done, today we're going to be tackling the Battle of Friedland in 1807, and we will see what we can learn about that. And as typical, that's just going to be one of the battles that we're going to talk about most likely. Epic history does tend to cover multiple battles in each video, but that one's going to be the highlight of this one. So, standard disclaimer, I do not know a lot about the Napoleonic Wars other than the broad strokes. And maybe a few little things here and there, but not much. So I'm going to be learning right along with you. That means I'm not going to be contributing as much as I like to in these videos, if anything at all, because sometimes some of these battles I just don't have any idea what's going on, what to expect, any additional information. Military history is not my forte. With that said, I will do what I can, and as always, I will include a link to the original video in the description down below. If you like what you see here, please head over to Epic History, show them some love and support for the hard work they put into this series. It shows, it absolutely shows. Alright, so let's just go ahead and get into this, and let's see what we can learn about the Battle of Friedland and everything surrounding it.
An Epic History TV History March collaboration. Supported by our sponsor, Skillshare, home of more than 22,000 online classes.
Cool.
Find out about our exclusive special offer at the end of the video.
All right.
1 week before Christmas 1806, French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte arrived in the Polish city of Warsaw, then part of Prussia. A year had passed since his great victory over the Austrians and Russians at Austerlitz, and 2 months since he'd hammered the Prussians at Jena.
Right.
But Russia still had powerful forces in the field, the most important of which was the Russian First Army, commanded by General Bennigsen. Napoleon would not be master of Europe until it was defeated, and Russia and Prussia forced to make peace. But that winter, Napoleon's first attempt to trap Bennigsen near Pultusk got bogged down in thick Polish mud.
Yep.
The Russians withdrew to Białystok. The French army, half-starved and frozen, was ordered into winter quarters.
Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. So yeah, Napoleon had just suffered one of his first, I don't want to say defeats, but victories that was not an overwhelming victory. It was touch and go. When they said that the Russians retreat to Białystok, that's mostly accurate. There were multiple groups there, and they kind of moved into various areas around Białystok. Not all of them ended up in Białystok, so that's just a generalization. They were in this region up here, but some of them, yeah, for sure were in Białystok. And yeah, that winter was a really rough winter. There was a lot of logistic problems as winter started to come in. You had roads turning to mud, and the mud turning to ice. And then, of course, winter itself setting in. That makes it really hard to live off the land. So, of course, they're going to be doing what they can to get supplies from the surrounding region. So the locals are going to be suffering tremendously from this as well. So let's continue.
While in Warsaw, Napoleon began a famous affair with a young Polish noblewoman, Marie Walewska.
Yep.
In the late 18th century, the once mighty Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had been swallowed up by its neighbours, Russia, Austria, and Prussia, in a series of annexations known as partitions. Until in 1795, a third and final partition wiped Poland off the map.
Yep. It's sometimes easy for people, especially from the West, to forget that there was a time when the Poland and Lithuania were regional superpowers, and some of the both independently and when they became unified under the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, some of the greatest powers of their day. They were easily rivals for places like Austria and Russia. In fact, Poland takes Moscow during the time of troubles in the early 1600s. But then they go into a series of, they go into a steady decline until we get to where we're talking about here. But there was a time when they were top dogs.
Now, Polish patriots looked to Napoleon as their savior, praying that his victories against their occupiers would lead to the rebirth of a Polish state. Marie Walewska became Napoleon's mistress in order to further this cause. Ordinary French soldiers, however, had little love for Poland. It was impoverished, freezing, and they missed home. Desertion rates soared. There were even 100 cases of suicide.
That's a pretty round number. I'd like to know if that's exact or if that's just a rounding up or down of a number. But yeah, like I said, this was known to be a really harsh winter. It's not surprising desertions are up. So many people have been away from home a long time. Now they're far away from home. They're freezing. I could see desertion going up and even suicide. So that's not surprising. That's pretty normal.
Marshal Ney, commanding 6th Corps, sent patrols towards Heilsberg, looking for better quarters. What they found were Russian and Prussian soldiers on the move.
Oops.
They'd stumbled into a surprise winter attack by Bennigsen. Napoleon quickly laid a trap for the Russian army, ordering Ney and Bernadotte to retreat and lure Bennigsen west, while he led the rest of the army north to fall on his flank and rear. But the Russians captured a French courier carrying the Emperor's orders to Marshal Bernadotte.
That makes a big difference in battles. When that kind of thing happens, suddenly you know what your enemy can do, and that's half the victory right there. If you know what your enemy is planning, you can move to counter it or to take advantage of it. We see that throughout history too. Another good example being the Civil War, when they find Robert E. Lee's war plans hidden in a cigar box and left behind when they moved on.
Bennigsen, now warned of the trap, ordered a retreat, fighting a series of rearguard skirmishes against the pursuing French. But he refused to give up the city of Königsberg without a fight, and turned to give battle at Eylau.
Right, and we just did Eylau. That's his big disaster. That's the one where Napoleon really, he wins, but it's kind of a turning point in some ways because the legend or the myth of Napoleon invincibility has been shattered. He wins, but it's a near thing.
The Battle of Eylau, fought over 2 days, was one of the most brutal of the Napoleonic Wars, fought in freezing conditions, with neither side backing down. Marshal Augereau's 7th Corps, advancing into the face of a snowstorm, lost its way and was cut to pieces by Russian cannon fire. 5 French Eagles were lost.
When you hear things like that in historical battle descriptions, you have to be careful and double check your sources and look at footnotes if there are any, because when they say things like 5 Eagles were lost, what do they mean by lost? Captured, literally lost, captured, temporarily captured. There's a lot of different things that can mean. So gotta be careful of how you portray it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Because I've seen cases where they're talking about something like this, and they say 5 were lost, but it's like 1 was actually captured, 2 were MIA until they turned up later, 1 was taken but recaptured a week later. So there's often an asterisk by that. So pay attention to that if you're trying to make a point out of that.
Napoleon's army was only saved by a devastating massed cavalry charge by 10,000 horsemen, led by the fearless Marshal Murat, and remembered as one of the great cavalry charges in history. At Eylau, for the first time as emperor, Napoleon failed to win a clear victory on the battlefield. He and the Russians covered up the true scale of their losses, but both sides are estimated to have lost a third of their armies in the carnage. After the horrors of Eylau, both armies sought time to rest and recover. Meanwhile, the newly formed French 10th Corps under Marshal Lefebvre besieged Danzig, held by 13,000 Prussians under General Kalkreuth. The city came under heavy French bombardment and infantry assault. After 8 weeks, with no prospect of reinforcement, the Prussian garrison surrendered on the 27th of May. Napoleon's northern sea flank was now secure against any possible Russian landing. The French emperor now commanded an army 190,000 strong, against just 115,000 Russian and Prussian troops. Bennigsen, who moved first, launching a surprise attack against Ney's 6th Corps on the 5th of June. Ney conducted a brilliant fighting withdrawal and escaped. Bennigsen, having lost the element of surprise, and with Napoleon advancing, retreated once more. 4 days later at Heilsberg, the French lost 10,000 men in a botched assault against Russian defences. But the Russians continued their retreat the next day. Napoleon thought Bennigsen would head north to Königsberg, but instead he retreated northeast, keeping to the east bank of the Eylau River. So when Napoleon's army marched north, it was Marshal Lannes' Reserve Corps on his right flank that next encountered the Russian army, near the small town of Friedland.
Okay, here we are. Ride your horse into the ground if you have to, but tell the Emperor we're fighting the entire Russian army. Marshal Lannes to his aide-de-camp. Oops.
In the late afternoon of the 13th of June, Russian cavalry scouts informed General Bennigsen that they'd found a single French corps at Friedland. Bennigsen decided he had time to cross the Eylau River and smash this isolated corps before the rest of the French army could arrive to save it. And he ordered his army to begin crossing the river. Marshal Lannes, commanding 16,000 men and facing 46,000 Russians, sent an urgent message to Napoleon that he was under attack from the main Russian army. Then he fought a skillful delaying action, hiding the weakness of his force behind a large screen of skirmishers, while gradually yielding ground to the enemy. Lannes was still holding off the Russians as darkness fell. That night, Russian engineers built 3 pontoon bridges at Friedland to speed the movement of troops over the river. But Bennigsen was taking a huge risk. If this turned into a major battle, his army would have to fight with its back to the river and the steep banks of the Mill Stream dividing its left wing from its right. Bennigsen had also badly underestimated the speed at which Napoleon's Grande Armée would react. The first French reinforcements arrived that night. The Emperor himself wasn't far behind.
We won't catch the enemy making a mistake like this twice. Napoleon on arriving at Friedland.
By dawn on the 14th of June, about 40,000 Russians had crossed to the west bank of the Eylau River. Bennigsen ordered an attack on the village of Heinrichsdorf to turn the French left flank, but French cavalry reinforcements, led by General Grouchy, intercepted the Russians. In more than an hour of charge and countercharge, the French horsemen finally drove the Russians back. Marshal Mortier's 8th Corps now arrived to reinforce the French centre in Sortlac Wood. General Oudinot's elite Grenadier Division fought stubbornly against Prince Bagration's left wing, but was outnumbered by the Russians and gradually pushed back. Around noon on a sweltering day, Napoleon himself arrived. He was soon followed by 1st Corps, commanded by General Victor, standing in for the wounded Marshal Bernadotte, as well as Ney's 6th Corps and the Imperial Guard under Marshal Bessières. The date, the 14th of June, held special significance for Napoleon. It was the 7th anniversary of his great victory over the Austrians at Marengo. A good omen, he declared. The battle then entered a lull, as Napoleon assessed the situation, saw Bennigsen's dangerous position, and issued orders for an attack to take advantage of it. Bennigsen, meanwhile, who was tormented by ill health throughout the day, saw that he now faced the full might of Napoleon's army, and issued orders for a retreat.
This is the objective: advance, looking neither left or right nor left, or into this thick mass, cost what it may. Napoleon to Marshal Ney.
But before Bennigsen's retreat could get underway, at 5:30 p.m, 3 salvos from the French guns signalled the start of Napoleon's attack. It was led by Ney's 6th Corps on the right wing, who first cleared Bagration's infantry from Sortlac Wood. But as Ney's troops left the cover of the trees, they came under heavy fire from Russian cannon across the river. As the French attack faltered, Prince Bagration rallied his men and launched a cavalry counterattack. Ney's corps retreated. But now General Victor's 1st Corps came up on his left. Its artillery commander, General Senarmont, advanced with 30 guns and blasted the Russians at point-blank range with case shot. Hundreds of Russians were mown down within minutes. Under this onslaught, Bagration's men began to waver and then retreat. Around 7 p.m, the Russian Imperial Guard launched a desperate counterattack to try to halt the French advance on Friedland, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. As exploding shells began to start fires in Friedland, the French centre and left wing joined the attack.
Oh boy, here it goes.
With its only escape route under threat, the entire Russian army began a panicked retreat towards the river. But Friedland's houses and bridges were now ablaze. The town became a deadly trap for the Russians. Many were drowned trying to cross the river. Others killed or captured. North of Friedland, some units were able to escape across a ford or along the riverbank, but there was no disguising the Russians' terrible defeat. The Battle of Friedland was one of the most decisive victories of Napoleon's career. At the cost of 10,000 casualties, he had inflicted twice as many losses on the Russians. About 20,000 men killed, wounded, or taken prisoner. 40% of Bennigsen's army. The Prussians abandoned Königsberg the next day, which was occupied by Soult's 4th Corps, while Bennigsen's shattered army retreated across the river Niemen into Russia. Tsar Alexander's advisors implored him to make peace with Napoleon. He accepted their advice, and a ceasefire was agreed.
Perhaps I was happiest at Tilsit. I found myself victorious, dictating laws, having emperors and kings pay me court. Napoleon in exile at St. Helena. Yeah, so Tilsit is kind of a pivotal moment in Napoleon's career. This is when we see the culmination of the restructuring of Central and Eastern Europe. This is where we're going to see major changes in the shape of that entire region of Prussia, parts of Russia, the former Polish and Lithuanian areas, into entirely different entities, like the dependency of Warsaw, for example.
Alexander and Napoleon met for the first time aboard a raft in the middle of the river Niemen, near Tilsit, and developed an immediate rapport.
That looks like more than a
proved to be one
rapport.
of history's great diplomatic summits, as the two emperors feted each other for days, with banquets, parades, and concerts, then discussed affairs late into the night. A friendship of sorts developed. While Russia's former ally, King Frederick William of Prussia, was left out in the cold, and it was Prussia who would lose most in the Treaties of Tilsit, signed 2 weeks later. 1/3 of Prussian territory was taken away to create the new Kingdom of Westphalia, to be ruled by Napoleon's 22-year-old brother Jerome, and the Duchy of Warsaw, to be ruled by the King of Saxony, which Polish patriots hoped would prove a stepping stone on the road to their own state. Polish troops were recruited into the Grande Armée, with Polish lancers even forming part of Napoleon's elite Imperial Guard. Russia only had to give up the Ionian Islands, as Alexander accepted an alliance with Napoleon that left the French Emperor master of Europe. Alexander even agreed to join the continental system, Napoleon's economic blockade of Great Britain.
Which isn't going to last long. Russia's going to go back on that, but yeah.
Which banned British ships and goods from all French-controlled ports. The system had been established the previous winter by Napoleon's Berlin Decree. Napoleon hoped that by cutting off British trade with Europe, he'd cause financial chaos and political upheaval in Britain, allowing him to make a favourable peace. There was just one problem. The continental system didn't work.
Nope.
Not only was it impossible to enforce and undermined by widespread smuggling, the system damaged French trade just as much as British trade. The decisive weapon in this economic war would prove to be the British Royal Navy, which that summer ensured its continued naval dominance by launching a preemptive strike against the neutral Danish fleet at Copenhagen, capturing their warships before they could fall into Napoleon's hands. Royal Navy squadrons blockaded all major French ports, seizing any ships trading with France, while ensuring British merchants could continue to trade overseas in relative safety.
And this is the period also where I think they gained control of, Heligoland, which is an island right over in this region somewhere, close to Denmark, the Netherlands, and Prussia, where they set up a smuggler's base, basically, where they can, it's a kind of a central distributing hub for illegal trading, well, illegal by standards of the continental system, with all these powers in this region.
The Navy even seized the tiny Danish island of Heligoland as a base for smuggling British goods into Europe. But most disastrously for Napoleon, the continental system would draw him into two conflicts that proved ruinous for his empire. The first would be fought in the Iberian Peninsula, where Napoleon decided to force Britain's ally, Portugal, to join the continental system. In November 1807, French troops, supported by their Spanish ally, invaded the country. The Portuguese royal family fled to their colony of Brazil, as the French occupied Lisbon without a fight. It looked as though Napoleon had won yet another easy victory. But the Peninsular War was just beginning.
And the Peninsular War is going to be a massive drain on Napoleon's resources from this point onwards. First with Portugal, but later especially with Spain.
Thanks to our sponsor.
Alright, so it looks like that's it. So yeah. A lot going on at this time. I said this period we're talking about here with the Battle of Friedland in 1807. This period is a period where we're going to see so much changing, like we said, in Central and Eastern Europe, in terms of geopolitical entities, countries changing and forming and morphing. The Duchy of Warsaw coming out of this, and Westphalia and all those others. And, of course, they just went into the continental system. They never did work great, but yeah, you get things like Heligoland, where they have the British are basically just ignoring the whole thing, and the Russians have just signed on to it, but they're not going to stay on it very long before they go behind Napoleon's back and start trading with Britain again. It's all going to come unraveled pretty quickly. So that's the end for today. We'll pick up tomorrow with some more Napoleon. So see you tomorrow for some more. Thank you for joining me. Bye-bye.